it's time to say goodbye. And for you, there's a realization that this parting must be final. You've likely said, "This time will be different," before, yet somehow your thoughts keep returning to the same person. Perhaps you've noticed the quiet ways they occupy your mental and emotional space. A casual reference in a conversation, a random photo that pops up in your memories, or a sudden reminder of a phrase they used to say. It may seem as though their presence weaves itself through every aspect of your daily life, altering how you feel when you wake up, how you handle your tasks, and even how you view the simplest interactions with other people. What's even more perplexing is the contradiction between your inner logic, recognizing you need to move on, and the unyielding pull that keeps luring your heart back. It's as if your rational mind and your emotional core are worlds apart, and the rift can make you feel helpless and uncertain about your next step. Many find themselves entangled in this conflict. They stand at a crossroads where a part of them longs to let go, to reclaim peace, while another part clings to the possibility of rekindling a lost spark or salvaging a bond that once felt indispensable. In this state, it's common to experience a swirl of conflicting impulses. One moment, you might feel resolute, convinced that cutting ties is the healthiest move, and in the very next moment, you catch yourself daydreaming about happier days or searching for signs that the other person still cares. These ups and downs can be exhausting, often leaving you questioning your own strength and wondering why liberation from this attachment seems so difficult to achieve. Emotional dependence rarely emerges from thin air. If you peel back the layers, you'll often find that it's entwined with personal history, old wounds, family dynamics, relationship templates you absorbed during childhood, or patterns shaped by disappointments you never fully processed. Maybe you recall an early experience where you felt dismissed or overlooked by someone important, an event that quietly taught you to cling harder to whomever offered warmth. Or perhaps you grew up in a home where love was presented as conditional, tied to good behavior or compliance, leaving you with a deep-seated anxiety that if you don't hold on tight enough, you'll lose everything. When a new bond comes along that seems to fill these unconscious gaps, offering a sense of belonging, safety, or validation, it can feel like discovering an oasis. The comfort is so sweet that even when the relationship turns painful or unbalanced, part of you resists the idea of letting go. What makes detachment particularly challenging is the blend of memory and hope. Memory evokes recollections of what once was, perhaps a period when the two of you connected effortlessly, creating a sense of shared reality that felt irreplaceable. Hope, on the other hand, conjures visions of what might still be. Maybe there's a lingering belief that the best times could come again, if only you stay committed, or if only the other person changes. These two forces, memory and hope, can merge into a powerful emotional tapestry that insists you hold on, even when every logical indicator suggests it's time to release your grip. Letting go in this sense may feel like losing not just the person, but also the idyllic version of life you constructed around them, the version where you felt understood, valued, or passionately alive. In fact, a key element that maintains your attachment may be the idealization of the other person. When you're deeply connected, it's easy to recall how they made you feel special, maybe through subtle gestures, shared jokes, or the unique way they saw something extraordinary in you. Over time, you might begin to overlook their flaws or minimize the harm you experienced, seeing it as a mere glitch in an otherwise perfect relationship. In some cases, your mind stores the positive elements in sharp relief, while the negatives blur or seem less significant by comparison. This bias can be deceptive, persuading you that you can't find those good qualities anywhere else. If the relationship had even a single phase of intense joy, you might replay it over and over, convincing yourself that somehow you can go back to that golden era, if you only try hard enough. The problem is compounded by the fact that human beings are wired to seek security, and letting go is often perceived as a threat to that sense of safety. When you consider parting from someone who has been central in your life, it can feel like stepping onto unstable ground where everything is uncertain. Questions arise. Who am I without this person? How will I handle loneliness? Will I ever find such a deep connection again? These concerns can strike at the heart of your self-esteem and your vision for your own future, making detachment appear so daunting that you remain stuck even when the relationship drains your emotional reserves. In a way, you might be trading short-term comfort, staying with what's familiar, for long-term well-being, unsure if the trade is really worth it. Yet, deep within, you may sense that the cost of maintaining this unhealthy bond is significant. You might notice your mental health deteriorating from the constant anxiety of waiting for their calls or texts. You might find your social life shrinking because you feel guilty stepping out of the emotional bubble you share with them. Or perhaps you catch yourself losing interest in personal goals, passions, or dreams because your emotional energy is so consumed by the ups and downs of this attachment. These warning signs are not betrayals of love. They're signals that something important is out of balance, calling for your attention and, ultimately, your action. It helps to take a closer look at the concept of projection. Often, when we form intense attachments, we place onto the other person qualities, traits, and potentials that actually reside within us but remain underdeveloped or unrecognized. You might see them as confident, and in doing so, neglect the sparks of boldness within yourself. Or you might view them as profoundly nurturing, overlooking your own capacity to offer deep care and compassion. This projection creates a narrative. I need them because they have something I lack. In reality, though, that something is a seed in you that needs cultivation. Recognizing this can lead to an empowering shift. It doesn't necessarily mean that everything you see in them is purely a reflection of you. People truly do have unique strengths. But it does mean that you have more internal resources than you might believe. Another factor that sustains attachment is self-deception. You might believe, for instance, that this is how real love is supposed to be, even if the dynamic involves destructive fights, long stretches of emotional neglect, or cycles of manipulation. If your core belief is that relationships inevitably involve suffering, you'll be less likely to realize that you're participating in an unhealthy pattern. Alternatively, you might cling to the idea that no one else will ever understand me like this, reinforcing the notion that your connection is irreplaceable. Such beliefs act like mental traps, blocking you from seeing that love can be healthier, more balanced, and far less painful. Then there's the issue of idealization itself. When you first form a deep bond with someone, the early stages can be marked by euphoria and fascination. In that euphoric state, you discover joys and insights that feel fresh and vital. Over time, as the relationship changes, the contrast between before and now can spark a grief that lingers, especially if the decline was gradual. You may keep chasing the memory of who the person seemed to be, unaware that both you and they have grown and changed. In those intense, searching moments, part of you imagines that you can revive the best version of them if only you wait or give more of yourself. This can become a spiral where each setback strengthens your resolve to fix things, and each improvement renews hope that you've almost arrived at a breakthrough, only to cycle back to disappointment again. What often gets overlooked in these cycles is your own emotional voice. Ask yourself, in trying so hard to keep this bond alive, when was the last time you truly considered your own needs and aspirations without filtering them through what the other person might think? Emotional dependency can redirect your entire life focus onto another individual's reactions, overshadowing your sense of autonomy. Over time, it may feel so natural that you don't even notice how the relationship shapes nearly every choice you make. From the big decisions like career moves or living situations, to the small everyday ones like how you spend your free time. By centering the other person's approval, you're gradually diminishing your own capacity to self-validate, making it even harder to imagine a life without their constant presence. This is where self-inquiry becomes invaluable. Taking time to reflect, via journaling, meditative practices, or honest conversations with people you trust, can uncover the deeper motivations behind your attachment. You might find you're still haunted by a feeling of having been unloved in the past, and so you search for a corrective experience in the present. Or you might realize you've become used to chaos and intensity, mistaking them for passion, and thus find calm or ordinary interactions almost uncomfortable. Once you identify these hidden drivers, you gain the power to question whether they're serving your growth or merely perpetuating a cycle that leaves you drained. Moving toward detachment also involves addressing your fears, particularly the fear of emptiness or loneliness that may accompany loss. Human beings are social creatures, so fearing solitude is perfectly natural, yet it can distort your decisions when it becomes overpowering. Recognizing that you can bear and even thrive in periods of aloneness can act as a turning point. Imagine discovering new hobbies, reconnecting with neglected talents, or finally pursuing personal aspirations you set aside. In choosing to detach from a harmful dynamic, you're not abandoning love. You're simply carving out space to explore and nurture facets of yourself that might have been overshadowed for too long. As you walk this path, you might fluctuate between clarity and doubt. There can be days when you feel unwavering, waking up with a sense of lightness because you managed to not dwell on them for most of the previous day, followed by nights when nostalgia or longing sneaks in, making you question whether you were too hasty or unkind. This oscillation is a normal part of the grieving and healing process. It's important not to interpret these moments of backsliding as failures. Rather, they are invitations to reaffirm your reasons for moving on. Each time you realign yourself with your resolve, you strengthen your sense of independence. It can also help to revisit how you define love. If you've tied love to persistent longing, emotional highs and lows, or even turmoil, you might conflate anxiety with passion. Real love, however, can be both profound and steady, supporting you through life's challenges without requiring endless sacrifice of your emotional stability. By distinguishing genuine affection from clinging or idealization, you start developing a healthier framework for future relationships. You learn to view love as reciprocal care, shared respect, and mutual encouragement, rather than a one-sided quest for validation or rescue. You may also benefit from surrounding yourself with supportive influences as you break free. It's useful to confide in friends who uplift you and remind you of your worth beyond this single relationship. Therapy or counseling can provide structured space to examine your thought patterns, unveil old traumas, and try new coping mechanisms. If you struggle with self-criticism, seeking professional help can guide you in reframing negative beliefs about yourself. Gradually, as you explore these resources, you reclaim the parts of your identity that have been overshadowed by your pursuit of approval or attention from someone else. Some who've gone through the process of detachment share that it feels like waking up from a dream. One day they realize the weight of longing has loosened just enough for them to see possibilities elsewhere. In career ambitions they'd pushed aside, in creative endeavors once paused, in the simple joy of forging new friendships without the worry of what someone else might think. Often, they describe a sense of gratitude for having experienced love or closeness, but an even deeper appreciation for the renewed control they have over their own mind and emotions. They report that, paradoxically, freeing themselves from the grasp of one person allows them to love more openly and authentically in other areas of life. Once you recognize that true connection shouldn't rob you of your sense of self, you become more capable of discerning which relationships truly align with your well-being. Of course, memories linger, particularly if the relationship involved defining moments, like key life transitions, shared travels, or personal triumphs. A part of you may still feel their presence like an echo in your everyday routine. The goal of detachment is not to eradicate these memories or diminish the significance of what you shared. Rather, it's about releasing the idea that these memories have the power to dictate your current emotional state. You honor them, but you also remind yourself that you have the right to be present in your life now, experiencing new joys, forging new bonds, and evolving into a stronger version of yourself. As you move further along, you'll start noticing the subtle signs of healing. It might be the moment you catch yourself genuinely smiling while reading a book or listening to a song, realizing that your first thought isn't to wonder what the other person would think. Or you might sense an undercurrent of calm when you reflect on the relationship, less bitterness, less regret, and more acceptance of how things unfolded. Your anxiety about the future gradually turns into curiosity, opening you to possibilities you might have dismissed before. You might even begin to define your personal aspirations more clearly, feeling a new surge of motivation to shape your life according to your own values, rather than shaping it around the expectations of someone else. Self-compassion remains a core element throughout this transformation. In moments of longing, instead of chastising yourself, you can respond with understanding. Of course, part of me misses that closeness. It's been a significant part of my life, but I'm choosing now to focus on how I can create a healthier reality for myself. Even repeating affirmations can help. As simple as telling yourself you're worthy of a balanced, nurturing love that doesn't compromise your emotional health. Affirmations might feel unnatural at first, especially if you've grown used to a cycle of self-doubt. Yet over time, they act as gentle reminders, guiding your subconscious towards self-acceptance. In addition to inner work, practical actions reinforce your progress. Maybe you decide to remove certain triggers, archive chats, photos, or gifts that pull you back into sentimental loops, at least until you feel less vulnerable. While a clean slate on social media might seem drastic, it can be freeing to reduce your exposure to their online presence. This boundary is not an act of punishment or bitterness, it's an act of self-preservation, creating a quieter mental environment in which to hear your own voice. Some people find comfort in redecorating their living space or rearranging items that served as constant reminders. Even switching up daily routines like trying a new exercise class or exploring a different coffee shop can signal to your brain that you're building a new chapter of your life. As your emotional load lightens, it becomes more evident that attachment and love aren't synonymous. Sometimes we equate strong emotional ties with profound love, but in reality, those ties can be driven by need, fear, or habit. Genuine love doesn't diminish who you are. It encourages both you and the other person to thrive as individuals. If you've been in a cycle where your identity feels diminished or under siege, you might be dealing with an unhealthy attachment rather than enduring love. Accepting that truth can be both painful and liberating. Painful because it shatters the illusion that this is just how love is, and liberating because it hands you the key to choose differently. In the aftermath of such realizations, you may feel a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief arises from understanding that you can indeed stand on your own, that you're not fated to remain forever entangled in an exhausting emotional loop. Sorrow may surface because you see how much energy you spent holding on, and perhaps there's regret about what might have been if the dynamic had been healthier. Letting yourself feel this sadness without rushing to suppress it is another step toward healing. These emotions acknowledge the significance of what you shared while opening up the path forward. In time, the sorrow mingles with acceptance, forming a nuanced perspective. You can appreciate the good memories, recognize their limitations, and still grow into a future not defined by that past. As you continue moving forward, it can be enlightening to pay attention to how you talk about the relationship in casual conversations. Do you always revert to blame, bitterness, or self-pity? Or have you begun to speak about it with more neutrality, more balance, possibly even gratitude for the lessons learned? Your language can be a powerful indicator of how far you've come in your detachment journey. Though you may never be entirely indifferent, especially if the bond was intense, you can reach a state where the relationship no longer triggers internal chaos. This newly found inner peace doesn't necessarily mean you'll never be triggered again. Now and then, you might come across a shared song, a familiar location, or run into mutual friends who bring the memories flooding back. The difference lies in your reaction. Instead of spiraling into emotional turmoil, you'll likely observe your feelings with more distance. You might acknowledge a slight pang, offer yourself compassion, and then let that moment pass, rather than letting it uproot your entire day. In that sense, emotional detachment grants you the spaciousness to be fully present with yourself and your current experiences, unencumbered by an excessive focus on what was or what could have been. In the aftermath, people often describe a sense of rebirth. Freed from the burden of incessant yearning, they gain clarity about the path they want to walk. Whether it involves rediscovering personal hobbies, nurturing supportive friendships, or opening themselves up to new romantic possibilities with healthier boundaries. Some report a newfound creativity, like finishing a long-abandoned writing project, exploring art forms that reflect their evolving emotional landscape, or plunging into community activities they had once neglected. This surge of energy arises because the mind is no longer preoccupied with rehashing old arguments or decoding cryptic signals from someone else. Instead, it can channel its resources into building a life that feels congruent and fulfilling. The evolution in how you perceive love and companionship can be profound. You may become more discerning about the people you allow into your personal sphere. Having recognized what an unhealthy attachment looks and feels like, you'll likely be quicker to notice red flags, or green ones, in future interactions. While this might mean you date less impulsively or take more time to cultivate friendships, the relationships you do form tend to be more genuine, respectful, and mutual. There's a certain power in realizing you'd rather be alone than entangled in a dynamic where you lose sight of yourself. One day, you might look back on this entire journey with a mixture of astonishment and pride. Astonishment, because it can be truly surprising how much you once tolerated or believed you couldn't live without, and pride, because you managed to reclaim yourself from a situation that once seemed inescapable. You might even find that your experience serves as a guiding light for someone else in your circle, someone who sees in you the living proof that liberation from emotional bondage is indeed possible. By sharing your story, you contribute to a collective healing process, reminding friends or acquaintances that these struggles, while deeply personal, are also universal. Everyone goes through heartbreak, or clings to someone who's not quite right for them at some point in life. And if you do choose to share your insights, you'll notice that it's not about vilifying the person you were attached to or discounting the real love or connection you felt. It's about acknowledging your right to emotional sovereignty. You can cherish the memories, but no single person can have the ultimate claim on your sense of self-worth or your ability to thrive. This realization is what truly sets you free. Love moves beyond a desperate clinging and evolves into a space of respect. Respect for yourself, respect for the lessons you've learned, and respect for the natural flow of relationships which sometimes run their course. From the outside, those who observe your process might see small changes before you do, like a renewed glow in your demeanor or a sense of calm that pervades your conversations. Friends might comment that you seem lighter, more playful, or simply more attentive to life around you rather than lost in brooding thoughts. Over time, you'll come to sense these changes internally as well, noticing how you bounce back more quickly from emotional setbacks. how you meet new people with open-minded curiosity instead of guarded cynicism, or how you spend more time nurturing personal goals that truly matter to you. There's also a shift in how you relate to the concept of solitude. Instead of dreading it as a lonely void, you begin to see solitude as fertile ground, a place where ideas can bloom, where you can realign with your values, and where you can rest from the emotional turbulence that once defined your inner life. Whether this takes the form of reading books you've longed to read, cultivating a mindfulness practice, or simply enjoying an uninterrupted night of reflection, the act of being alone starts to feel less like punishment and more like an invitation to self-renewal. Ironically, as you become more comfortable in your own company, your attachments become healthier in general. You approach people from a stance of wholeness rather than from a desperate need for them to complete you. In the end, letting go is not about denying the connection that existed or pretending it meant nothing. It's about recognizing that no external relationship, no matter how intense, can replace the relationship you have with yourself. Part of self-love is knowing when to release what harms you, even if you once cherished it. Another part is honoring the lessons learned, embracing the tenderness, the passion, the laughter, and even the pain, for all of them helped shape who you are today. And who you are today is a person who deserves emotional liberty, the chance to explore your potential, and the freedom to seek or create love that uplifts rather than entangles. If you feel drawn to do so, share these reflections with people who may be struggling similarly. Perhaps a friend of yours is still checking their ex's social media late at night, or a family member feels trapped by a toxic relationship but can't imagine life without it. Offer them understanding, compassion, and maybe a few words about your own journey. How you discovered that release can be an empowering act of self-preservation. In doing so, you're not just helping them, you're reinforcing your own healing path, reminding yourself of the progress you've made and the wisdom you've gained. Ultimately, each step you take toward detachment affirms the deeper truth that your identity is your own to define. You can love fully and deeply while still maintaining healthy boundaries and a strong sense of self. You can remember the past fondly without being shackled to it. You can care about someone without sacrificing the space you need to grow. As this understanding sinks in, you'll find yourself exhaling stress you didn't even know you carried. The future begins to look less like a place of dread and more like a canvas of possibility, colored by the realization that you possess everything you need to cultivate a rich, meaningful life. So let this be your gentle reminder that goodbye needn't be the end of love or the final word on who you are. It can be a new beginning, a chance to reclaim your wholeness and to invest in your own happiness and potential. It's entirely possible that in stepping away, you're stepping toward a far more expansive version of yourself, one that embraces hope, renewal, and a deeper sense of peace. And if you've resonated with these words, you might consider offering them to someone else who needs a spark of encouragement. By spreading insight and compassion, you participate in a collective environment of healing and growth. Each time you or someone else finds the courage to let go of a bond that no longer nurtures, it brightens the path for all of us, reminding us that we can walk forward, free of old emotional burdens, toward a future we have yet to fully imagine.